Not everybody knows what I mean when I say ear hustling, but I think if I give you a description by way of a little bit of a story, you'll understand what I mean. When I was growing up in Prince George's County, Maryland, my mother had 3 best girlfriends: my Aunt Barbara, my Aunt Cora, and my Aunt Carrie. These were her sisters, not by blood or birth, but chosen family. And my entire life, they've been present, always, ever present. Summers, birthdays, holidays, funerals, weddings, celebrations, they were always present. They were always in the house. I remember the sounds of their voices, their laughter, their tears, the way they smelled, their makeup. And one of my favorite things to do, I think it was my sister's favorite thing as well, would be to ear hustle their conversations. There is an art to ear hustling. It's when you, as a kid or as someone who wants to hear what's going on in a conversation but not be obvious, just kind of make yourself real quiet and you start moving really slowly. Still, you stop moving. You listen. Your ears get peaked. You don't make eye contact, but you listen. Because the jewels that are being dropped, you know that even if you don't understand them, they will be useful or they are valuable at some point in your life. One of the reasons why I started the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause is I wanted to provide an access point to the ear hustle, taking the ear hustle to a whole nother level of experience. And rather than ear hustle, let's just make it open. Let's just talk about it together. Let's make this a generational, intergenerational exchange. Let's talk about it openly. Let's be together. Let's share the jewels. Let's share the stories. Let's share the tears. Let's share the laughter. Let's share the magic. This is the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, introducing...
we supposed to be doing the introductions?
That's what I thought.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Oops. This is the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause. Introducing Aja Gillian Taylor, who uses she and her pronouns. I'm an community organizer. I organize around affordable housing, an aspiring sex educator, and I'm really, really excited to be in this conversation with my homie.
Hey, my name is Cherizar Tiffany Marie Lee Crippen, pronouns she, her. I am a healer, educator, artist, and youth advocate and worker. I love teaching other babies about our ancestral practices as it concerns religion and so on. And I'm super excited to be here with all my babies. We will be in conversation today with Omi Sade, Bernie, Scott, and Makani Themba.
Yay!
We're here!
Yes.
It's lit.
Hey, y'all.
Hey. So before we dive in, we wanted to talk a little bit about, why we are taking over this podcast, why millennials, why it might make sense. And Cherizar and I were talking just about this and thought that we would actually talk about it in the context of our own periods, right? Our own period stories. And it's interesting. I was actually just talking to my mother about this last week and about just how grateful I was for how she decided to teach my sister Ife and I about our bodies and about our periods, and how for her, so much of it was rooted in, when she got her period, she didn't know what was happening, right? She thought she was dying. And she didn't have any context for this thing that was happening in her body. And my mom didn't want that for Ife and I. She didn't want us to feel afraid, right? She didn't want us to feel afraid of something that our body was naturally doing. And so for me, I got my period at summer camp, at University of Virginia summer camp. And I was like on my way to go hang out I was going to meet my mom and sister and my dad and my god sister Ashley. And I got my period at summer camp before I went to go meet them. And my mom was like, she was like, oh my God, I can't believe you got your period without me. And I can't believe you didn't tell me till you got here. And I was like, sis, it wasn't a big deal. You sent me with the period kit of all period kits. I was super prepared. It came and I was like, oh, this is my period. Like, I know what's happening. And because I was insistent on swimming, I was like, my first period, I was using a tampon because my mom was like, well, you can't swim with a pad. And I was like, well, baby, this vagina's ready, honey, for whatever intervention needs to happen. So I can get in the chlorine, baby, because I'm trying to swim. Period can't stop no show. So it feels just very fitting that we would be in this conversation around menopause, which, still is shrouded in so much like mystery and myth. And in so many ways, this conversation about menopause or women who are experiencing menopause or people who are experiencing menopause, even people who aren't women who experience menopause, so much of it seems like asexual, right? Like a woman who is menopausal or a person who's menopausal is asexual or is, I don't know, like angry, like all these myths that we hear and learn. And so, yeah, I'm going to kick it to Cherizar for, yeah.
It's so interesting. We didn't talk about that earlier, and our stories are really similar. My mother, one of 11 children that they knew about at the time, basically, when she had her period, thought she was dying, which was wild because you have all these sisters. She only had one brother. You have all these sisters, and it just wasn't a conversation in the household. So she was dead set that was not going to happen to me. We were stocked up way before I got my cycle. And when my period finally did come, I was away from home on a school trip. We were at some kind of colonizer situation, they take you out in like the woods somewhere. And they're like, this is where we kept our Black people. And it's like, yes.
Oh, no.
And so I just had these terrible pains, right? And I decided to sit down on one of their antiques or whatever. And like, you can't do that. And I was like, well, I can't. I was really feisty. So I was like, I don't feel good and I'm going to sit here. And they were like, pulled me aside. Like, this is not like her. She's such a good student. Like, what's going on? And that's when I found out, they're like, oh, there's something on the back of your pants. So that embarrassment, right? And didn't have any pads, so just literally tissued it up, did that situation, and they put me on the bus by myself.
What?
Yeah, my mom raised hell. But yeah, that's where I ended up raiding. I remember raiding everyone's lunchbox for chocolate. I was just angry and just like, I'm hungry. And so that was my first period. I think I got it rather young, like 10 or 11. I don't know if that's young. And then there was this conversation now about like menopause, because I'm 38 now, right? I think I might be perimenopausal. I asked my mom about it and she won't talk to me about it. It's very interesting that. So I wanted to be in this conversation with y'all, and I listened to the podcast pretty religiously because I'm not having that conversation with my mom. Omi is my big sister and it's leading the way. And what is the extension then for the young people coming after me that okay, I can get you ready for a period and I can get you ready for menopause too. Yeah. So I'm excited to be in conversation with y'all and just for all the content that has come out so far.
Yes. So we wanted to kick it off with really our first question, which is who even are you?
Who you be?
Who you be? Who your people is?
Mm-hmm. Makani, I'm gonna let you go first because I love the question.
Yeah, I feel like I have such a crew, but there's a part of me that was also sort of reflecting on my period story, and I was as I was listening to you all, which I think is probably an interesting, probably a maybe even more streamlined way of saying who my people are. Yeah, I feel like I am the union of two people who were super opposite, who were on a trajectory, and they met in a moment and then kept on moving, right? And so, my father was Southern born but Boston raised, and son of a preacher who became a preacher. And so there was that whole sort of what my brothers and I jokingly call the Baptist side of the family. And then my mom was, from when I was really young, like 5, kind of became a hippie. She was kind of busted out of that kind of housewife thing and stopped wearing shoes. And we lived in New York City. So let's be clear, not wearing shoes is a commitment. Living in New York City. And so,
nice.
And it was like this
Like,
sort of hilarious thing where, like I grew up in Washington Heights, Harlem. Well, at first I lived in Long Island. That's a longer story, but and my mom would have this poncho and we have the same hair now. And so she would walk into school. Can you imagine, with like the bare feet walking the streets of New York and the poncho, and folk would be in class like, damn, your mama looks like Jesus. Right? So I it's like two very different kinds of
Jesus
things.
the
And
Christ.
so it was beautiful in a lot of ways. My mom had like a guru, she still does. Of course she wears shoes now and all of that, but I grew up in these two very different kind of settings, and my whole life has been in many ways loving and bridging and holding that. I didn't have my period around my mom. I was with my dad, who was completely freaked out, and his parents were visiting, and they were completely freaked out, and they were trying to convince me if somebody touched me, I would get pregnant. Like real freaked out. Like I was, the kind of cursed body thing, right? And my mom was like, well, maybe it's time that, when I got to live with her again at 15, she's like, well, we should go to Planned Parenthood, like she had like a very sex positive, it was like total polar opposites. So anyway, that's a little bit about it. And my mom is like Caribbean with Latinx roots. My dad is like African American with a lot of indigenous roots. My grandfather was raised on a reservation. I have a lot of people.
And how about you, Omi? Thank you, Makani.
I know. I was just sitting here thinking about
so good, so juicy.
All the people that walk with her and how they made an incredibly beautiful person inside and out. And man, I guess since we've kind of found a nice intro with our period stories, I got my period in the 7th grade. We were living in Maryland at the time, in PG County in Lanham. Yes. And I was going to Thomas Johnson Junior High. And on Halloween, I started my cycle. Now, my mom was a nurse, and I feel like my mother was very progressive for her time. Now, my mom wasn't walking around barefoot with a poncho, but she was in her own way, for a woman born in 1930, I think fairly progressive. And so she, as an RN, she always talked to my sister and I about our bodies. And it was always from this place of keeping our bodies safe, where it's like, don't let anyone touch you. If someone touches you, tell me, I will believe you. Don't let anyone pressure you into doing anything that you don't want to do. In retrospect, there's so much language my mom was trying to give my sister and I around consent, right? And just also knowing that everything that's happening to you is natural. There's nothing wrong with you. Like, it's natural.
Yeah.
So she had been kind of prepping us for a while. And then my cycle started on Halloween, and my best friend, Sandra Lynette Jones Malone, who was also at Thomas Johnson Junior High with me. We were besties. We are still friends. We've been friends now for, Jesus Christ, 42 years. We've been friends for 42 years. Wow. And I passed her a note in math class, Mr. Barnes's class. Mr. Barnes hated us because we talked all through his class every day. Every day. He was like, these girls are just like blah, 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 blah. And so we're passing those back and forth. I'm like, I feel something in my panties. And she was like what? I was like, it's weird. She's like, weird, like what? I'm like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not like something that has ever been in my panties before. So I know it might be my period. She was like, okay, I'll handle it. So she pops up, much to my horror, and goes to the front of the class to Mr. Barnes and whispers in his ear, Billy's period has started and we need to go to the nurse. And he looks at her like, why are you carrying this
spokesperson?
Ambassador for the period.
Your representative.
Period ombudsman. So she's like standing there with her little hands on her hip, like, yes, we need a pass because we got to go to the nurse. And he's like,
that's right.
We got to go to the,
because it's our period, honey.
Listen, but I'm also sitting there looking a little horrified, confused.
Oh.
So he was like, go on, y'all, get out of my class. So we go to the nurse, true black math teacher fashion, get out of my class. And when we get to the nurse, she looks at me and Sandy says, she is in need of sanitary products. I believe her period has started. And so the nurse looked at her and said, well, did your period start? And she said, no. She said, then go stand outside in the hall, please. Sandra was aghast. She was like, oh,
okay, your escort.
Yeah. Right, your doula.
My doula. I quit my
doula.
She was like, what?
Come on, period doula.
And the nurse was very pleasant. She was like, how do you feel? I was like, I'm crampy and tired. She said, oh.
Was your nurse a black woman?
No, a white woman.
I was curious. Okay.
And she asked me, which is, odd for PG County in the 70s. I don't know how she ended up at Thomas Johnson. But she said, do you want to call your mom? I said, no, I'll call her when I get home from school. She said, okay. So she gave me a pad that was like a small telephone.
That's what I said.
You could see like Omi's hands.
Like, yeah, I need to see the hand gestures. Yes, it's like a foot long.
Oh my gosh! Was it a Kotex? Was it like a big, thick Kotex?
It was a bit like, yes, it was like a sub, like a menstruation. Yeah. It was so long and so thick. It was plush.
Oh my god!
And then it had
comfortable though. Plush kind of sounds nice.
No, ma'am, it was not. It had two long kind of like strips on the end to pin into my panties.
Oh,
she didn't have any with the
adhesive.
And it wasn't like she didn't ever have any. She was like looking through the drawer. She said, "Oh, this is all I have." I was like, "Oh, okay." So she told me what to do. Word, I go in the bathroom and I pin it as best I can in my panties. And when I put my panties on and my faded glory jeans that fit me like a second skin.
Come on, JC Penney.
I felt like I had
a diaper on.
Wedged between my legs. And I'm walking out. And Sandra's like, you okay? I'm like, yes, I'm okay. So this is a long introduction, but people have met me before. So maybe this is a story they haven't heard before. But when I got home and I called my mom, because she was still at work, she cried. She was so happy. She was like, I'm so excited for you. And this is a beautiful thing. And she was thrilled. And then she told my dad's sisters, my Aunt Emma, and my Aunt Anna, and they sent me a period box.
Yep.
And in that box were OB tampons, Kotex,
okay, OB,
both with the adhesive and with the pins. 7-day-a-week panties. So
yes.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yes.
Sunday.
And Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Exactly. And they were all pastel colors.
Yes.
Right? And a lightweight girdle and a full girdle. And I was like, I'm 12. Why do I need a girdle? And the little note from my aunts were like, you're a woman now. And it was like this rites of passage into, the coded language of now you can get pregnant. So you need to make sure your butt's not jiggling when you're out in these streets. Because now people are going to be able to, sniff it out and be like, oh, her period has started. She is ready. She is ripe.
Sharks in the water.
Sharks in the water. But that's my long-winded story of who I am and a constellation of two beautiful people who felt absolutely and utterly in love with each other. And it ended too short because my dad transitioned when I was 1. My mom and dad got married and immediately started trying to have children together because they had children before. This is new information to me about my mother having had children before. I found this out back in the fall. Did not know that. Didn't know that my mother had been married before to a man who was quite violent and mean and abusive when she was 20. She was a kid.
A baby,
and they had 2 babies together. And when she was ready to make her escape from this violent marriage, he refused to let her take the children. So she never saw her kids again. So we just found this out at the end of November, and I met my nephew Terrence and my nephew Eric. My sister and brother are also ancestors now, so I didn't get to meet them. But we favor, which means my mama's genes are hella strong. And not only are they're strong, you can see them throughout all of her descendants. In me and in my sister and in our children.
Yeah, for sure.
It's beautiful. It's just so beautiful and powerful to see her be immortal.
Yeah.
You know, through these folk that we just met. And my nephew is marrying his partner, Anthony, next month. So my sister Georgette and I are going to give him away at his wedding. We've been vaccinated. We've been blackcinated.
Yes. Come on now. You take that black scene for a spin.
Yes. So that's my intro.
Love it, love it, love it. So we were wondering, I feel like you all touched a lot on when you came into, or maybe the beginnings of when you came into your sexual awareness, right? Through the lens of like the adults being like, oh, okay, like you need to wrap it up and be careful and all these kinds of things, and acting like you can get pregnant just from a look, right? But when did you all, I'm curious, and maybe you start with Makani, come into this awareness about your own sexuality?
That's a really interesting question. I there's a part of me that feels like that. It feels like I there wasn't a point where I wasn't aware, and maybe that's part of the huge socialization that comes that as women. I think that from when you're a little girl, the expectations of what being a woman is supposed to be, including like pleasure or all these ideas. So I think there's a part where you learn it, then there's a part where you unlearn it. So you have sexual awareness, but it's like, is it the awareness that you want? Maybe not, right? But I think for me, coming into sexual awareness on my own terms, as opposed to sort of like the colonized like pictures of the the movies and all of that. And I love old movies, and I always say to people, you don't really understand this country if you don't watch old movies, because film is the blueprint of the American psyche. What people dream about, what they think is true, like what love looks like, all what's pretty, all of that's right there, right? And so being somebody who just always loved movies, even from being really small, and I think it just informed me being the media person that I am and the way I write about things, it's just like you see these stories in front of you about what you're supposed to be, the shape you're supposed to be, all of this, and that's what sexy is, and that and that maybe you shouldn't have a sense of sexiness unless you look that way. And so what was really powerful for me coming up in the 60s and 70s was people fighting that, right? Saying, yeah, nah, sexy is all the things. And also coming up, my mother was very much a feminist, and was very much a part of that movement. And so that was really important. So part of my sexual awareness is, one, I had choice, everybody's beautiful.
Amen.
And that the other part of it too, that my mom was very much into, which in some ways may feel like a contradiction, but my mom always linked sex and love for us. Like to her, it was like you needed either love for yourself or or the person needed to love you. You didn't necessarily have to love the person, but she felt like, try not to just throw yourself at somebody who doesn't care about you. Right. And her thing was never like, don't have sex with somebody that you don't know, but she would just always say, but it's so much better. That was her, like, the incentive. It's like, it's so much better if that person respects you and if that person has some connection with you. And yeah, you can get off. Like, yeah, you could do that. Because my mom was very romantic. My mom has a beautiful voice. And she would sing these love songs around the house. And her favorite movie was Warm December, and just loved the idea of romance and really instilled that, I think, in all of us. My brothers too, my brothers, my sister, all of us, and we're all really romantic people. And so I think that
that's really beautiful.
Right. So sexual awareness and romance, right or wrong, are together for me. Maybe maybe those expectations are like super high. I'm still working that through.
It's really interesting. I'm just sitting here thinking about the similarities, and also, growing up in the 70s and the 80s in Maryland, colorism was a big thing. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation in the last couple of weeks or so around people learning about the young lady who was called to be an extra on Lovecraft Country, and they darkened her skin to look browner to match the older actress that she was supposed to be playing a younger version of.
I did not hear that. Wow.
Yeah, it's been kind of floating around in the Twitter sphere and in
the nerd sphere
for the past week or so. I remember very much growing up notions of romance not being attached to girls. Could be for a guy. Like, be like, oh, yes, that guy can be found appealing or, fine or attractive, but not the girls. It's interesting. The same year that I got my first period was the same year I was kissed for the first time. And it was the first time I experienced arousal. And I was like, I like kissing. This
Amen. Shout out to the kiss lovers.
10 out of 10, we'll try again.
Right. I definitely wanted to try it again. And it was also when I first became clear that I was too brown in the context of 1979, Prince George's, Maryland, to be considered attractive. And I was told that. So when you're forming or placing value, romantic value, sexual value, attraction, or whatever on yourself, and you're told that you're just a little too brown to be that, it sticks, it stains, it permeates. And I do have a sense that probably when I was about 15, I decided that there's nothing I can do about being the skin tone that I am. But what I can do is shine. And I started weaponizing things. Weaponizing that I'm smart.
Yep.
So I'm going to be super smart. Weaponizing that I'm active, and me and my sister doing hella stuff. We were super active. So I'm going to be really active. I'm going to be in all these leadership roles. It's like I was trying to construct the right atmosphere for folk to be compelled by me in spite of themselves. You see what I'm saying? It was like, and I know I ended up in sexual situations and relationships with people to prove a point.
Yep.
To prove that, I know you don't really mess with brown skinned girls, and here you are. And here you are. What do you have to say for yourself? And I always found myself thinking about this in the last, 5 or 6 years, before I turned 50, and definitely since I've been in my 50s, thinking about that survival mechanism, mechanism that I started to craft with a very young, immature mind. And I also wasn't talking necessarily to people around me who could perhaps have said, that's not accurate, darling. That is not accurate. I absorbed it. I took it in.
Yep.
Then I started making observations. Oh, so that's what you consider good looking. Oh, and that's who has power in the school. Oh, and so I just started calculating. All right, well, if that's what it is, then voila, I'm going to put something together and you're going to find me attractive even in spite of the fact that you don't usually date brown girls or you don't usually think that brown girls are attractive. And so it's been like Makani said, it's a process of learning and unlearning. And so I think that the beautiful thing of getting older and having perspective is one, I don't judge my 12-year-old, 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old, however old self. I know why she did what she did. I do. She did it to protect us.
Come on.
She did it because she wanted to be seen as lovable, right? Yeah. So what my work has been is to remind her we are all lovable. We're all lovable just the way that we are. Come on and get in this car with me and let's keep going and exploring. So I think that my sexual awareness and was definitely, like Makani said, her situation was, my mother was definitely a romantic, and she was a romantic who had a lot of melancholy. And I didn't know why until recently, why there was so much melancholy for her. And so it's like, yes, there is romance. What you're waiting for is to be rescued. What you're waiting for is your soulmate. What you're waiting for is that love. And that love is going to take whatever sexual experience you have to the next level. That's one thing playing in my mind. And the other thing playing in my mind is, but ain't nobody going to want to do that with you because you're way too damn brown. So we'll have to figure out how to finesse it to kind of replicate what you want, but it might not be authentic.
I mean, really, in this vein of like not just sexual experience and coming into sexual awareness in general, I'm curious what that journey has been like through whatever stages of menopause you may or may not have been in, right? For me, so much of my curiosity and really like worry is like all the things that I hear. So as a person who is very intimate with herself, like hearing all of the things that are like, oh, as soon as menopause, as soon as you get perimenopausal, man, that's it. Like, you may as well lock that pussy up, honey, because she's done. Okay?
Dry up.
I'm like,
what?
I'm like, excuse me? Yikes.
So, I got pregnant when I was perimenopausal, right?
So I'm trying to see what's up, okay? I'm trying to know the deal.
This is so interesting. Well, question, and I don't know, I'm definitely dying to hear what Makani says too. Were these people who were saying to you, the cat's going to just dry up and you're just going to be a sorry sot person, were they your peers or people who already had experienced menopause trying to like warn you that you were in danger?
I wish I could remember, because I know some of it was my peers. So like thinking back, I'm like, okay, so we was all stupid, right? So we ain't know shit, right? We ain't know nothing. And we're depending on each other. Also talking about menopause at a time when it was just like, what? I think it was just like all of our parents were going through it.
Sure.
And so we're just like, oh my God, they always have the windows down when it's cold. What is this? It seems miserable. She's always hot. She's always scary. I'm like, oh my God, when is this over? Are we all going through menopause? What's happening right now?
Yes, we were all going through it, actually.
Yes.
A lot of the things, yes, peers, but also it was just like this societal conditioning. I think when I think about like media, like Makani was bringing up before, there are no, to me, positive images or like even detailed experiences of the menopausal person in the media for them to take from. So it just seems mysterious. My mom did not seem happy. And so there was like, this understanding that that's all downhill. There's that over the hill thing too that people are always talking about. Like this downward progression that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Makani, you want me to jump on it and then you go?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the very interesting thing to me is the assumption that everybody experiences it all the same way, and we don't. So I just want to say very, very clearly, there are physical transformations that people go through as they get older. And for some people who have experienced menopause or are experiencing menopause, it can have an impact on their libido. It can also have an impact on vaginal dryness and lubrication and things like that. So I'm not going to downplay that those things certainly can be true for some folk, but they're not true for everybody. And
Is there like a percentage?
I think it's a person by person. So one of the things that my gynecologist did say to me is like the more you have sex, the better the sex is. The more you self-pleasure yourself, the better it is. The more you continue to have orgasms, the lubrication might be not the same that it was when you were a little younger, but you might not have problems. So it's like encouraging to say, no, you can still have a very fulfilling sex life. Things you might make adjustments, but it's not to say that you should expect it to look like the Mojave Desert and just
for real.
That there's nothing left for you. I don't believe that. Now, of course, we are also now living in the pandemic.
In the panoramic.
The panorama, and so
Panasonic.
Opportunities for intimacy with anybody have been very challenging, right? Anybody. So I think that has led me to be like, well, what are the things I'm going to do to still engage in self-pleasure with myself? Because I don't want to not experience orgasms. I don't want to not experience pleasure. I don't have a problem touching myself at all. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to keep doing that. And I do it when I feel like it. And if I don't, I don't. But I don't feel like I have plummeted off of a cliff into a place where sexual expression or pleasure is no longer available to me. I didn't jump. I didn't have a menopause cape, and I was like, I regret nothing as I jump off the cliff.
That's hilarious.
Hey y'all, I hope you are enjoying this latest episode of the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause. Before we continue with this episode, I wanted to bring a word from our sponsor. Before I started working with Kendra, I asked them to share more about themselves and their values. And here's what they had to say. We started Kendra with a seemingly simple mission: empower people who are experiencing the hormonal changes of menopause to care for their bodies naturally, safely, and holistically. And what does that look like? Plant-powered, estrogen-free essentials that do what they promise. Kendra is science-backed support made by women and tailored to you. And I love hearing all of that because I wouldn't want to partner with anyone or any entity that is not natural, safe, and holistic in their approach. Kendra's line of peri, meno, and post essentials includes a daily vaginal lotion that has a revolutionary reusable applicator that dramatically relieves vaginal dryness, a sleep-enhancing supplement, an energy-boosting supplement, and a dynamic daily wellness supplement, all thoughtfully designed to target and relieve any of the physical manifestations we have along this menopausal journey that sometimes includes hot flashes, brain fog, and mood swings. Kendra has a great offer for our listeners. For any first-time purchasers or subscribers, you get 20% off anything you wish. To get 20% off your first order or subscription, go to ourkendra.com/omi20. That's ourkendra.com/omi, OMI 20 to get your discount today.
I'm going to kick it to Makani.
No, I love it. I was one of those people who really didn't have any real issues around. I didn't have sweats. I didn't have any of that. I had a period that kind of trailed off and trailed off and trailed off. And then I was like, oh snap, I don't have a period anymore. I didn't really have a lot of that stuff. But I also had I'm an herb person. I take herbs. I do things. There's things I do for my own, like every day. That might be it. It might not. But I know that mentally and spiritually, because I had raised children, I was just dedicated to having a life post children where I was sexy. I was like, this is my opportunity. I could, when I wanted, I could do it. I could just like do the thing.
Amen.
So, and I think it's true. Like, I think the more you are engaged, whether it's autoerotic or with other people, the less you have to worry about things like dryness or things like that. That's never been an issue for me either. I'm 60. I turned 60 last year. I think that, patriarchy puts so many things in our heads about the value of women. And, in a world where even now, where women design rocket ships and do whatever that is for capitalism, like it works for capitalism for women to be fully engaged in one particular way. But in another way, it's kind of like what you're really, all you are is like this sexual object, and that has an expiration date between this date and that date. Unless you work out all the time. And if you have anything hanging or flipping or jiggling, then your expiration date is done. And then you literally have people like walk up to you and say things like, well, you look good for your age. It's like, what does that mean? Right? Like, what does that mean? Right? When people say that kind of thing to you, or folks approach you because they think you look younger than you are, which says something. So I think that part of what it is, you talk about decolonizing periods. What does decolonized sex look like, right? Like really, like what does decolonizing beauty look like? And I feel like for me, it's a constant daily practice. I literally have a Post-it on my mirror, right? That to remind me. And I have a lot of privilege. I have like hair privilege. I have all kinds of privilege. And even with all of that reflecting back to me, I still have to have the Post-it. I still have to remind myself. I still have to be in meditation, remembering the beauty that I am, the divine being that I am, and to want to shine that light so other people can say, oh, I'm beautiful too. Or, and Omi knows about this. How many people walk up to you and tell you their color, their dye stories? They'd be like, girl, I would do that if, right? They're like they're hair confessions. And so, and for people who don't know, both Omi and I have silver hair. And it's a thing. It's part of our thing, right? It's who we are in many ways. We could play with it, but pretty much it's who we are. And I think all of that, deciding that you don't have to be a youngster to be sexy and to engage. And here's the other thing, and this is an important thing on the health piece, is that you need orgasms for your pelvic health. That literally, if you don't have them regularly,
come on now.
It's serious though. The muscles in your pelvic floor start to atrophy. And that, so you have people who have like, literally have pestles, like little tables inside to keep the floors from hitting together. So, you need to get it, whether it's with yourself or however you do it, for your own health. But because we have this like patriarchal, colonized medical stuff that, they would rather put a table inside a woman's womb than say, look, baby, just,
get your fingers popping.
Yeah, just get it, work it out. And if you don't like that, if you like batteries or whatever it is, whatever. But it's like, it's like that is, that's the information we need to know. That's the stuff we need to understand because, and it affects everything because sex is necessary. Pleasure is necessary.
Come on, Pastor. This is the menopause story I was looking for.
It's a basic need.
This is going to be me when I hit menopause. Sex, what? Okay, you hear that? I'm keeping all the vibrators.
And we are decolonizing our bodies and our minds and our sex and our and all those things. And
Yeah.
That's what connects our synapses, all of it, pleasure and intellect and spirit. It's like we are whole beings and we are spiritual beings. And it's like sometimes when people try to make it like, oh, this is some profane thing. I mean, that's capitalizing
That's
sex
right.
and making it like, here's this thing and you
That's
can
right.
only have it this way. And so then there's porn and this, that, and this, all these things. Because if it's not monetized, they don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Yep. And I told this to my mother the other day. I'm not sure if she knew this or not, but my auntie Gillian, who is my godmother, who I'm named after, who passed, was an OBGYN. And the first time I masturbated, like, she was who I went to because I was like, well, I can't talk to my mother about this because I wasn't even supposed to be watching HBO after dark. So I'm gonna go tell Auntie Gillian because at least there's some, HIPAA. I don't know.
So many people I know had their first orgasm to HBO.
Yes. I was like, there's something happening. I was like, I was watching TV. There was a little something going on. So I tipped down there to see what was up. And it was a party. Like, what's that about? She was like, oh, honey, like, let me tell you. Okay? Let me tell you the fantastic world of masturbation. Okay? Let me tell you how it don't get you pregnant, child. You figure out what you like. And so I never felt pressured, Makani, what you're saying, I never felt pressured to have sex with another person because I was like, I can do this myself. Why would I engage with another person, risk all these things that I'm actually not interested in, including emotional commitment back then when I was toxic? And I'm like, now I can do this myself? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, that was like, still feels like one of the best gifts that she ever gave me. Yeah. Was this real orientation toward pleasure and self-pleasure in particular that was like, oh, baby, that almost made it like pleasing myself was the main event. Right? And I'm curious, like, even in this conversation, I feel very, very curious about like how your relationship to, not just your relationship to your body, your relationship to your vagina, but your relationship to your period. Like, is there some grief there?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. I feel like it's complex for me. I don't miss having a cycle. I don't. I haven't had a cycle in almost 8 years. And I think when I first realized that I had hit 365 days with no cycle, I did have a little bit of a, well, this is a new place for me. It wasn't grief in the way that I have experienced grief before. Perhaps in retrospect it was. It felt a little wistful. I felt a little bit like, oh, this is a new place. And immediately after thinking, this is a new place, I wanted to talk to my mom. So I think that because my mother has been an ancestor since 1998, I had that again, a marker, a significant event in my life that she wasn't present for in the physical form. And I talk to my mom all the time. It came to me in a dream night before last. So we have a very strong bond and continuing relationship from where she is. But I really wanted to be able to sit down with her over a glass of wine and be like, I ain't having no more babies. I ain't got no more cycle. I'm divorced. What's good? What's getting ready? What's getting ready to happen, mommy? And for her to be like, ooh, girl. I mean, whatever you want to happen is about to happen. I wish that I would have been able to do that. So I did feel wistful, but I don't miss my period. Now, getting older is complex when you don't look your age. So Makani had given a nod to, people giving you compliments and saying, oh, you don't look like you're 54, about to be 54. And as if being 50, there's a problem with being 54. Like, I want to look my age, and I want looking my age to be an indication of vitality and happiness and healing and joy and choice. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want someone to look at me and be like, oh, well, she looks like the 54-year-old, like, I don't know, model. Like, no, I look like an average 54-year-old Black person.
You don't look average, baby. Ain't nothing average
Never.
about you.
I appreciate
Never.
that.
I don't know if the viewers have Googled you, but you're fine, okay?
That's fine. I take that. Thank you.
Stacked like a brick shit house, okay?
Iconic.
My dad said
Indeed.
that one time when I was in college. I came downstairs to go with my girlfriends. He said, "Where are you going in that outfit, looking like a brick shit house?"
That's right, okay? That's right.
I was like, "Daddy," and he was like, "Absolutely not. Absolutely, no, ma'am, no, ma'am, no, ma'am."
That would be.
Anyway, back to the aging thing. What I do notice now are things are changing in my body. The same way, we've described our hair, this natural genetic DNA situation with the gray, white, silver hair that people are always fascinated by. Everything else goes gray too, y'all. So your eyebrows go gray, underarm hair goes gray, pubic hair goes gray. And I'm just like, there are times I'm like, oh, it's no biggie. And there are times I'm also like, seriously, you have to go gray too like that? Like for real? Like that's what we're doing? Is that what we're doing? Most days I wake up and I'm so grateful for this body, especially this body that carried me through 2020. My God, so much gratitude. And there are also days when I'm looking at my body and I'm just like, well, that's a new dimple. All right. I see that. Oh, the girls they have decided that they want to take up real estate closer to my navel. Right. Yes. Okay. Are you comfortable there? They're like, we comfortable. Is it warm? Like, it's so soft and warm. I'm like, okay.
Liberate yourself from underwires.
I have liberated myself from bras, period. Unless I'm going to be on a Zoom with a bunch of people I don't know, the bra stays in the top drawer.
See?
So I don't feel grief. I do feel change. However we manage change, that's how I've been, managing the change of not having a period or getting older. It's like there are days when it's fine, and there are days where it's like I'm present to it, thinking about it.
I love that.
Mm-hmm. Did you want to add to that, Makani?
I'll just do very quickly because I know we just have a few minutes left to say that, nah, I don't miss it. I didn't. I was grateful that it was done. I was one of those people who did, a permanent sort of birth control after I had my second child. So I was just kind of waiting for it to just be done, right? I wasn't trying to make any babies anymore or anything like that. And I will just amen that the idea of how it gets complicated. I'm just so grateful to be a Black woman and alive. Where there's so many of us who didn't make it here. So I just want to continue to have gratitude. And sometimes it's hard because, as someone who isn't partnered and, the pandemic was wild, right? Like there's all kinds of stuff like you think, well, what do I need to be? But what I mostly want to do is let go of that and just be like, beauty is all of this. And it's like whatever, like you have babies, you have a stretch mark or whatever, or like all of that is a map of your life. And yeah, I could eat better, I could work out, I could do all the things. And I've been kind of round most of my life. As my daughter would say, round is a shape. That's what she used to say when she was like, oh, I need to get in shape. She goes, Mommy, round is a shape. And I'd be like, all right then, And the beauty I want to see in everybody else, I want to look in the mirror and see it. So it is a practice.
I agree.
Thank you so much. If we have a little time, we're going to close out with maybe one more question, maybe just one thing that you would want to tell your tender 30-year-old, 20-year-old self about what's coming.
Ooh, that's a good question.
Makani, you want to start it off?
Sure. It's funny. I was literally having a conversation with a person in their 30s about this yesterday in the nail shop. But I would say, when she asked me the same question, but the main thing I would say is love and take care of yourself. Really. That's your 30-year-old self is always making choices. It's not about you. It might be because you have kids. It might be, but it's like just love and take care of yourself. And that will be the gift that keeps on giving your whole life.
That's so beautiful, y'all.
Listen, Makani said it all. I was literally thinking if I could sit down with 30-year-old Billy, I'd be like, girl, please take care of yourself, honey. Mm. Please take care of yourself and love yourself. Choose you. Choose you. Choose you. And you're good to yourself and you love yourself and you take care of yourself. Everybody and everything will work out just fine.
That's right.
I promise. So that's what I would say. I think we're so hard on ourselves. Right? And we're hard on ourselves inside of a context of a world that tells us there's something wrong with us every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And so if you could find a way every day to poke a hole through all of that nonsense and be like, you know what? You know who I mess with hard? Myself. I rock with her. Rock with her. Yes. That's my girl. That's my boo. I love her. And so I would definitely say that very similarly to what Sister Makani said. Just love yourself. Take care of yourself, baby.
Yes. I feel like approaching my 40s, if I could go back and talk to my 20-year-old self, like, one, it gets better, hon. It gets so much better. And you start running out of fucks to give. And it's a beautiful thing. True. You just like, I have like 3 left. I'm not spending it on this. What about you, Asha?
Yeah. And I think honestly, it's sort of like what I want to tell my tender 20-year-old self is it's about to be lit. And maybe it doesn't feel like it right now, but it's going to be lit. And you are as BC as you think you just might be. And there's a part of me that's like, what do I want to like call forward for myself in 20 years? I'm 34 now, I'll be 35 next month. And I want to call forward, like, and this conversation really feels like it affirms that, just like, yeah, you get to enter into transition with ease and with grace. And that there will be many more transitions. There have been many transitions and many more on the way. But like with such badass Black women and folks who like have gone through these transitions. Grateful for like a really good relationship with my mom that we can like talk about some of that stuff too. Just feeling like, it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be scary. It actually can be quite easy if I let it.
Yeah. You should just call this episode God is Change. We are done.
Ashe.
Yeah. So thank y'all so much. Thanks for letting us take over.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you for taking over.
Yes.
Thank you for telling us all your business.
Oh, y'all, I love y'all so much. And I also to be able to do the takeover and me be a guest with my big sis and be in this space with y'all virtually. I love you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Yes. So much joy.
Hey, good people. I hope you enjoyed this Millennial Takeover with Aja Taylor and Cherizar Crippen and Makani Themba, who was a special guest with myself. Fantastic conversation. I knew it was going to be a great conversation, and I'm so glad that Aja and Cherizar were like, Omi, we want to interview you because we feel like it's important for these intergenerational conversations to take place so people can ask the questions they want to ask now. They don't have to wait until they're in menopause to ask the questions. So thank you so much for tuning in. There's information about all three of our guests in the notes of the podcast. And to learn more about the Black Girl's Guide to Surviving Menopause, check out our website. That's also listed in the notes for this podcast episode. If you are interested in being a supporter of the podcast, you can make a one-time donation, or you can become a sustainer through our Patreon. Again, all of that information is listed in the notes of this episode. We do want to hear from you. So if you have questions or thoughts or reflections, drop us a line. Send it to listener letters. You can send them to Decolonizing the Crone. That's all one word. decolonizingthecrone@gmail.com. And in the subject line, put listener letters. We definitely want to hear from you. Thanks so much for tuning in to this very first episode of season 3. We have so much more in store for you. And as always, we will see you on the dark side of the moon.